In recovery meetings, my name is Mark Blyth and I'm an academic. There are a few problems with being an academic. The first one is that I read for a living. The problem with reading with a living is that it kills any joy that you have for reading, and there's always more to read. So that creates a bit of a bind. I discovered this a few years ago when I looked at the bookcase in our house and found all these amazing novels that I've never been anywhere near. My wife's read them all. So how can I possibly recommend books given that I've cauterized my ability to find any joy in reading things? Possibly because when you read for content like I do, things that change the way you think about the world become rather important because they stick out and they really affect what you do because you're an academic. So one of my three books, it's actually three in one honourable mention. So the first one is Nassim Taleb's The Black Swan. I had read his previous book, Fooled by Randomness, and loved it. And I met him around that time, and he's just an incredibly interesting thinker. And I'd had hunches about many of the things that he writes about in the book, but he just systematically put it all down and said, no, this is what's going on. And it's an incredible jolt to the system to read that book, and it changed the way I think about things. I actually wrote an essay about the Black Swan and also Taleb's wider work at that juncture, and it's in critical review, and you can get it online for probably $10,000 because it's behind a paywall. But by March, when I finally had time to reboot my website, you'll find it's up there and you can have a look. Next one, Albert Hirschman, The Passions and the Interests. This is a beautiful, short, concise, and astonishingly insightful book that basically charts the evolution of capitalism, but it does so like in 125 pages. And it does so by pointing out something that Foucault wrote about in very, very tortured terms over several books, which is that you can't really have liberal capitalism until you have liberal economic subjects. And that process of creating those subjects is a political process, which begins in the salons of Paris and Scottish Enlightenment, Edinburgh, and continues to this day. Fabulous book. Third one, and this is the one that many people go, is actually one of those books that everyone thinks they know but nobody has read, which is John Maynard Keynes' The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, the General Theory. The conventional wisdom on this is that it's a torturous or tortured book and it's hard to read and all that, and they're not far wrong. I mean, some of it's a bit dry. But when you do engage with it, it's amazing. It's more like The Black Swan in the sense that it's a series of essays about particular topics. And two things jump out at you. The first one is any notion that the world is a tractable distribution of risk is completely flawed. The future is unknowable, it's profoundly uncertain, and the way that we behave as social beings in that world is something that fascinates Keynes and has always fascinated me. The second thing is that the macro has an identity of its own. It is not scalable, it's not reducible to the micro, and the whole fetish of micro foundations is utterly misplaced. Something else that I very much agree with. So it's worth reading for that, but it's also worth reading because when people talk about Keynesian economics and multipliers and all fiscal stimulus, etc., hardly any of that stuff's in the book. It's really quite a very different thing from what you think. So that would be my three. The honourable mention is John Kenneth Galbraith's 1954 book, which I think is based off his PhD dissertation, on the Great Crash of 1929. It's amazing. Consider the following. Written in 1954, chapter 4 is called In Goldman Sachs We Trust, right? Same different smell. So in reading that and getting my students to read it and read about 2008 in the light of reading this book about 1921, it's incredible. We just keep doing the same stuff over and over again, causing massive financial damage, and then having this amazing ability to forget. And as the other book had it, proclaim that this time is different. Only it's not. So anyway, there we go. Taleb, Hirschman, Keynes, and Galbraith if you've got the time. If you want to get inside my head, and I can't imagine why anyone would want to go into that dark and scary place, have a read of those and then you'll find you're halfway there. That's pretty much it. The other half, I'll keep for the nightmares. Bye.